Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Director's Playbook. I'm your host, Paul Lovelace, and we've got an insightful conversation lined up today. So today we have George Owens. Hey, George.
How are you, Paul? Thanks for having us.
Man, I'm excited to have you here. And we want to explore how surveys can transform funeral homes, and you're just the person to talk to about that.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Fortitude, and for those who may not be aware of what you do and who you are.
Sure. Thanks again for having us. So Fortitude Research and Marketing, we founded in 2018. I have experience with both J.D. Power and Associates, which is where really consumer surveys were born. I started there pretty soon after college, and I spent 12 years there. And then I spent 12 years at SCI leading customer engagement. SCI, of course, the world's largest funeral and cemetery company. And then in 2018, I got together with some of my friends from both J.D. Power and then some folks from SCI that are on our team. And we specialize in data-driven marketing, and we do an awful lot of surveys.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your advertisements all over the place, and so we know about Fortitude and the good work you're doing. So that's one of the reasons we're excited to have you on the program today. One of the things I just love surveys, how they can show families that their voices are important and they matter. So would you be able to share a little bit about that for us?
Sure. Great question. The survey itself, we believe, is just the instrument, right? So a survey just is the conduit for that insight that's going to come from that consumer. And what Mr. Power used to teach us was that the very best market research, the very best information you get is from families, from customers. So the survey, being that tool, provides you the opportunity to get that insight. The power is in the insight, because really, regardless of what industry you're looking at, folks want to tell you their story. So we use the survey to help bring that out.
Yeah, and I think lots of businesses are jumping on the bandwagon there, because I don't know about you, but you go to the dentist, you get a survey opportunity. You take your dog to the vet, you get a survey opportunity.
Right.
And you get out of an Uber, you get a survey opportunity. And I think that's great. You think that's just something that's catching on, or is it just me?
No, we all get them, and we're getting them. Walk out of the Apple store, and they can send you a survey just as your foot hits the transom, right? So the technology is great. The technology is incredible. And I think back to, even just 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, companies are sending out tens of thousands of paper surveys per month.
Yeah.
Now the technology's there, so we can do it all digitally.
Our original surveys were all paper.
Right.
So when they would come in, the difficult part was, number one, just sifting through all the paper, but the ability to tabulate all of it and get something meaningful was just next to impossible.
Right. And so I don't know if you did it on your own or if you had a partner, but companies that are specializing it, people hear research and marketing in our name, but what we're really doing is we're trying to bring data to life, right? So we'll compile all that information that you're talking about and then design analyses that'll help you try to get what's really going on. So we ask all kinds of questions, whether it's a question on a 10-point scale or an open-ended question where you're collecting just verbatim data. We may use tools like AI to help find out what's going on and look for themes. But I think we're at a time in the market research world and in the customer engagement world where we've got a huge opportunity to get and help folks find operational improvement. And a lot of times the survey program itself is going to pay for itself. It's going to generate enough revenue from what you learn, from what you hear, from generating leads, that a company is going to be able to fund the program itself just by using the information that they get.
I love that. There's a lot we could dive into on that. I think I wanted to back up first and just talk just about the funeral space in general. So do you have any idea how many funerals are currently surveying their family, just like a family satisfaction kind of survey?
There are, if you think about it, there's thousands of them, right? Because everyone from the largest consolidators to independent funeral homes are measuring in some way. Maybe they're doing a full-blown program like Fortitude CXP. Maybe they're doing another program. But what's different about the program that we have, it's different than what a traditional aftercare or another type of program might be out there. Those have a great place in the industry and in the world, right? What we're really looking to do is we're really looking to find those operational nuggets that a funeral home owner, a cemeterian can use to help understand something about their business and drive better engagement. What's critical, obviously, about our industry is customer loyalty. You want it to really be a customer engagement program. You want it to help uncover issues where they're there. But one of the things that we like to highlight is those great moments, those moments where a family couldn't make it throughout the day without that help they got, and they want to tell their story. We've been in programs where, in my history, we sent out 30,000 surveys a month, right? Huge amounts of data, and being able to analyze that, as you mentioned, and cull through it really is what's critical.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, you talk about some of those stories. Any of those come to mind that you want to share with our audience today?
Great question. There's always one that I always remember, right? So this was a story about a family that had a tragic, unexpected loss, right? And one of the things, especially we know, those of us, that have been in the funeral space for a long time, every death has some amount of tragedy to it, right? There's always someone that has missed that. But this particular story was about just the care that they had experienced when this loved one had passed. And just, they wrote so eloquently in a letter that accompanied the survey. And they just really thanked the company for allowing them to have an avenue to speak about their loved one more time. And it's just something I always remember and always keep with me.
Yeah, and as a funeral director, that's like getting a virtual hug. I mean, you're excited that you served that family in that way. So that's good stuff right there. But it just made me think about the funeral home that didn't have the opportunity to get that feedback. What message are you sending to families, or what message could you inadvertently be sending to the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul. One of the things that I believe, right, that is that if we're not asking for feedback, we're asking for a bigger problem down the road. So whether that feedback is in a call, a CEO call, or an operator call, or someone calling that family to make sure everything was okay, that in a way it's a survey, right? It's a phone-based survey in a way. It may not be as formal a program as a Fortitude CXP as some others that are out there, but you want to capture that information. If we ignore it, we ignore it at our own peril, because we make assumptions, and we all know what happens when we assume things, right? So, if you're interested in operational improvement, if you're interested in driving future leads and future connections and driving things like online reviews, people are obsessed these days, rightly so, with online reviews, because now today, so much information about who I should do business with comes from my community, right? So we need to understand what's going on.
That just made me think. So if you're a funeral home owner today, I guess you care equally as much about Google reviews as you do about surveys that you're getting, or should you have one or the other, or both?
We believe in both. We have a lot of clients that are integrating all these programs together. And when they do that, they're really giving that family for the future the best, because they're taking the information that they glean from what we're doing today with this family in front of us, and they're going to use that to get better. And when they're doing that, operational improvement occurs. That next family is going to get even a little bit better service than the family got today. And the other thing too, right, what we tell all of our clients is, for the most part in our funeral and cemetery business, we're going to be pretty well served, right? Satisfaction levels, engagement levels are pretty high across the industry. But what we like to concentrate on is, are the customers seeing, are the families seeing the value in your service, right? We have in the funeral and cemetery industry a service that for the most part is expensive. There's sometimes a lot of confusion about it. And there's certainly a lot of emotion. And so that's a good formula for when things can go right or can go wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm just thinking, you said some things about loyalty there, and I think it's real important to any business, but especially in the funeral business. And I've heard some statistics about how expensive it is to get a new customer or a new family versus keeping an existing one. And I don't know the exact number, but I know it was exponentially higher to get a new one than to keep an existing.
Yeah, it can be as high as 3 or 4x, right? Especially if you think about it. Even the small town funeral director, right, hometown funeral director, is spending a certain percentage of their revenue on marketing in some way, right? Whether they are sponsoring the Little League team or the Easter Sunrise service, or they are doing a full direct mail or email marketing campaign or social media campaign, they're spending marketing dollars. And so being able to track what the effectiveness of that is and that return on that investment becomes important. It's way more expensive to try to find that new customer. Think about what your selling costs are, and then think about what benefit am I getting by having that information right at my fingertips, and it really becomes a no-brainer when you look at the bottom line.
That's good stuff right there. Let's turn our attention maybe to some specific surveys here. Something, if you're a funeral home owner that happens to be in our audience, you're probably thinking of different types of surveys. Is there one that you would think is the most effective survey for the funeral professional in the 21st century?
And well, we happen to believe that a online survey where the family is able to take it on whatever device that's in front of them, right? Because in today's world, right, most often we're doing things with our phones. We're used to that, and it's almost impossible to imagine that folks may be looking for a funeral home on their cell phone, but think about that loss, that families that are experiencing that loss when they have to search for that funeral home or that cemetery. Those are two different experiences, right? I think about the town where I grew up. There's a handful of funeral homes. I pretty much know where my grandparents used and where my family's used. So on the one hand, I might use Google to find and understand like what the phone number is or get that information. But if I'm really shopping, if I'm really looking for that information, I'm most often doing it on my cell phone, right? Because it's right there in front of me.
Is there an optimal number of questions that you have in mind for families? I mean, is it 10? Is it 15, 20? How much is too much?
That's a great question. Actually, what we try to concentrate on is how long is it going to take the average person to get through it, right?
Okay.
So we have a few different surveys depending on, and a few different lengths of those surveys depending on what you're interested in doing. So if I'm looking at getting some hot button items that are going to help me create some KPIs or help me do that, we may use one survey that you can get through in 3 minutes, right?
Okay.
If someone's looking for a little bit more information, we may get a little longer and then a little bit longer further that. But for the most part, we want folks to be able to get through their funeral survey, their cemetery pre-need survey, their at-need survey, in about 3 to 5 to 7 minutes, right? And so we have, what's beautiful about the way the technology works is we could have 100 questions. You're never going to see 100 questions because the way we ask the questions with the survey, you're being led through the question chain to only answer those surveys that pertain to the experience you had. So it gives us a lot of flexibility and it gives us a lot of ability to be able to just program it. So luckily the technology's there to get folks episodically through the experience that they had.
I actually didn't know that. That's very interesting they can do it that way. So another innovation, an innovative way to do it. Have you, in your experience, determined that some questions are better than others, or how do you know what to ask exactly?
If you think about it, one of the things that we believe at Fortitude is that we want to take folks episodically through their experience. Sometimes that's looking at what happened from the very first time I called the funeral home on that at-need, or if I'm looking at a pre-need experience, what was that experience with that salesperson sitting across the table, right? So we want to take them through that in the way they went through that experience. It keeps the mind fresh. It allows them to go and be able to go, all right, first I called the funeral home and then I went through the process this way. So the kinds of questions we ask within them are built around that experience. So it could be as simple as what were your overall impressions of the funeral home? It could be an agreement question. We ask questions in a way that folks can understand and be able to look at them in an intuitive way and be able to really address that. We have open-ended questions, and that really a mix when you have those, what we call a scaled question, when it's on a scale like agreement, or a rank question where you might ask them to rank something on a scale of 1 to 10. And of course, the open ends allow us to get as deep as we can.
That sounds awesome. I would love to be able to do that with my family, I guess. Let's say, let's rate our meal on a scale of 1 to 10. And
that's right. Well,
rate your father.
You might get in trouble with whoever's made that meal if you do it that way, but absolutely.
All right, good point. I was just thinking about response rates. I don't know what's considered a good response rate. I mean, if I send out a whole bunch of surveys and I only get a handful back, how do you know if that's what a good response rate is?
Here's what's great about the funeral and cemetery business. Families want to tell us their story. It's not unheard of for us to average response rates that are in the high 20s to the mid 30s.
Really, that high?
We have some locations we work with that have a 60% response rate. We have some that have response rates even higher than that. But then it blows you away. You have some really large locations where they're getting a 30% or a 35% response rate. So that's really great. You think about those questionnaires, you were talking about those surveys when you walk out of the barber shop or you walk out of the, the tire shop or you walk out of the dentist's office. they're happy if they get a 2% response rate on those, right? They're happy if they can get just a handful. Think about the survey at the bottom. When you leave the post office, they always circle the thing and say there's a survey here. If they can get a 1% response rate, they'd be thrilled. Well, one of the things that we know in the funeral space is that people want to tell their story. They find it as an opportunity to, again, talk about that loved one that they're grieving. So it's not unheard of for us to have at Fortitude response rates that are in the 30s or more.
So it just made me think about, you mentioned feedback, because again, that's important for the purpose of the survey. But, has there been any surprising feedback that you've gotten based on what you've seen in a survey that you might share with our audience?
To me, the most surprising feedback is that folks continue to talk about the role that technology plays and their search for transparency, right? Folks want to interact with funeral homes and cemeteries digitally, online. They want to be able to look at what's available. They want to be able to search for those things. And those operators, big and small, funeral homes and cemeteries, that are providing a good online experience where folks can look at and see what it's going to be like to do business with that funeral home or that cemetery, where they can find pricing, that I think is something that continues to blow me away. Also, the number of people that say they'd be interested in doing business online, if that was possible, continues to be something that's growing.
Really?
So we're approaching, almost 40% of families that are going to be telling us pretty soon that they're interested in doing business online if that was available. So
Did you say 40%?
It's going to approach 40% pretty soon. So one of the things that it's not uncommon for us to see, we're the research team behind the FCCBS study that Foresight puts out every year. Now it's in its 6th year. So it's not unheard of for us to see a third to 34 to 35% of folks tell us they'd buy funeral or cemetery property online if they had the opportunity.
Wow. That's real encouraging for especially the funeral home customers that get it. They're already investing in technology. They're using digital marketing sources, and they may not fully understand it all, but they know they need to be there. And so that's good news for that segment of the customer base. So what's one survey trend maybe that you're seeing that funeral homes should prepare for in the coming years?
The most important thing is that consumers are going to continue to want to see funeral homes and cemeteries respond to the changing tastes of the customer, right?
Okay.
For so long, it's hard to believe now, right? I first started in the funeral business in 2004 when I was still at J.D. Power, and I started working with funeral homes and cemeteries in 2004. By the time I got to SCI in 2007, now what you start to see from then to today a real change in the way consumers are coming to expect. If you think about where we were even 20 or 30 years ago, the majority of information we got was from the company itself. Today, we get it from the community. We don't have to rely on the company to tell us what it's like to do a funeral, or what kind of funeral can I have, or what kind of memorialization opportunity is there. We can go to community forums, we can look on Yelp, we can look on other rating sites, we certainly can look at Google, and we can get a whole story. So I think the most important change and the most important thing we have to look for in the future is funeral homes and cemeterians have to be constantly looking at where customers are going. Other industries, right, are going to continue to affect the way we do business at the funeral home. If you think about it, just a few years ago, you couldn't buy a car and have it delivered to your home. Well, during COVID, that changed a lot, right?
Yeah.
So many things changed during COVID, and it's not a rubber band where it's snapping all the way back. So the funeral homes and cemeteries are going to be successful moving forward, are going to be those that understand that data is critical, right? That understanding the way that consumers are talking about us, are experiencing us, are doing business with us, and most importantly, how they want to do business with us in the future is critical, because then you can make marketing decisions based on data.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to ask. So the data, you think, is that impacting their decision making at the funeral home level?
If it's not, it should be, right? Because we have all kinds of data already, right? We look at the number of deaths in our community. We look at what our market share might be. We look at what kind of return are we getting on this particular expense or on that. We look at cost data. So we should look at customer data, right, on that list. It should be part of our dashboard, part of the KPIs we're using to run the business, because that's going to give us one more way to look at what the health of that business really is.
Oh, that's fascinating. So I'm just thinking, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the funeral home who doesn't have a lot of technology. So what's the best advice you can give to that particular funeral home owner as far as when it comes to surveys?
Well, what's critical is that they don't have to have a lot of technology, because the beauty of it is, if you want to do a program like Fortitude CXP, we help you provide all that. If you want to do an aftercare program, right, and you want to have an aftercare solution, there's programs that don't require a lot of technology. So one of the key things is that just reach out to someone, whether it's us or someone else, ask the question, hey, how do I get involved in this? I know it's important. I know I should do it. Now, what I think is, I think you'll be very surprised to know how easy it is to get on board and how cost effective it is down the road. Because after all, we expect all the programs we do at Fortitude to be revenue generating and to pay for themselves basically.
Yeah. You're speaking my language now, easy and cost effective. I think that's probably everyone's language there. So what you speak of cost effective, what's a ballpark range? I mean, how do they price this thing out for the customers who might be curious about that?
So a lot of times an aftercare program is generally done on the per family basis. We tend to look at the funeral home location itself, or the group of funeral homes, or the company, and look at what that's going to be, and then provide one single simple price, right? And we don't care if you send one survey or a million surveys out, right? It's all digital. Once it's programmed, it's ready to roll. And then depending on what kind of analytical or what kind of reporting power you're looking for on the back end, those are generally the cost drivers. So from that standpoint, it's technology and data analytics. And we're very happy with our program to have everyone from single point funeral homes and single point cemeteries to larger players as well.
George, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic conversation and very insightful, and we're grateful for your time today. I want to say thank you to everyone in our listening audience for being on the Director's Playbook. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe and check us out online. And until next time, you guys take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great to see you.